Close your eyes and picture the world centuries ago tonight will bring those distant moments back to life, offering a soothing retreat from today's bustle. You are somewhere in feudal Japan, the moon veiled behind a thick curtain of mist. It's the kind of night where even the frogs dare not croak, and the crickets seem to whisper instead of chirp. You kneel barefoot at the edge of a rice paddy, listening not for music, not for laughter, but for the faintest tremble in the air that says someone's watching. Your breath is slow measured. You feel the cold of the damp earth through your clothes, but there's no room for fidgeting. You're on your first mission. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where we all end up drifting off. Wherever you are, I hope tonight brings you rest, comfort, and maybe a curious dream or two. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air smells of pine and old mud, and a dog barks distantly too far to worry you, yet just near enough to keep you alert. The village ahead sleeps wrapped in the kind of silence only disturbed by wandering spirits and professional trespassers. That's you now. Well, apprentice trespasser, technically, sir. Your teacher, let's call him Jiro, left you here half an hour ago with nothing but a nod, a charcoal scribbled map, and a vague warning about the guard who snores unless he's stabbing. Jiro's mentorship style, much like his personality, can best be described as economical. You would describe it as vaguely homicidal. Still, you're grateful. After all, you've trained in the shadows of Iga province for nearly 10 years for this very moment. Tonight, you step into your new life. Or tiptoe into it, really. Loud footsteps are for samurai. As you move across the footbridge, you think about how your training began not with swords or poisons, but with patience. Hours spent watching ants carry crumbs, memorizing how to move like they do efficiently, invisibly annoyingly determined. You learn to breathe in through your nose so softly that even the dust under your sleeping mat didn't stir. Your first weapon was a ladle because no one notices the cook, and even fewer suspect that cook to be silently lifting a ledger or stirring in just a bit too much nightshade. A frog leaps into the water beside you and you freeze mid-step. Ripples fan out across the surface like gossip across a court. Then stillness returns. You make it to the perimeter of the outer compound, a wooden fence more decorative than defensive. Your map shows the real prize beyond a scroll tucked away in the study of a minor lord who collects secrets like others collect calligraphy sets. You crouch. A faint breeze stirs the long grass behind you, and for a second you imagine it's Jiro checking in. Then you remember he said, "If you survive, meet me by the cedar stump. If not, I'll send someone for your sandals." Comforting. You crawl through the small hole in the fence, a fox-sized tunnel someone forgot to fill. It wasn't part of the plan, but part of being a ninja is adapting. Also not dying, both important. Inside the compound, the world is quieter somehow, more fragile. You pad toward the garden, its carefully arranged stones now playing host to snails' dew, and your very cautious footsteps. You pass by a plum tree, its blossoms drooping, like they too are drowsy. There's a tiny lantern flickering near the veranda, and you think that must be for the guard. Good. You like seeing things coming. Mainstream historians agree that ninja missions like these covert infiltrations were common during the Sengoku period, when warring states valued any advantage, even the invisible kind. But historians still argue whether these nightly missions were more stealth or more storytelling. For every record of a successful infiltration, there are 3 others that mention ninjas vanishing in a puff of smoke or turning into birds. That last one might have involved sake, You pause at the study's shoji screen. Through the paper-thin paneling, you hear a soft snore, one long breath, one short. Predictable. You smile. This part is in your training manual, right between how to not fall off a roof and excuses for when you're caught. You slide the screen open just enough to slip through. Inside the room smells of ink and old wood. Scrolls are stacked like sleepy ideas waiting to be read. You inch toward the lacquered cabinet. Every step is deliberate. You think about the rice grains your master scattered on the floor of the training hall, how stepping on one was the equivalent of a scream. This floor is easier, smoother, yet every creak feels like betrayal. You find the scroll. It's wrapped in faded silk tied with cord. You tug gently. The cabinet breathes with you, no squeak, no sigh. Success. Then a sneeze. Yours. It's tiny, involuntary, ridiculous. A feather dust of breath that betrays you. The snoring stops. Your heart drops into your sandals. You hold still. A long pause. Then, miraculously, the snoring resumes. You could laugh if you weren't actively leaking adrenaline. You tiptoe back toward the door, passing a faded ink painting of a dragon with surprisingly pouty lips. Dragons never look amused in art. You wonder if they were funnier in real life. Once outside, you melt into the shadows, retracing your steps. Garden, fence, rice paddy. When you finally make it back to the cedar stump, Jiro is there. He's sipping tea, not offering you any, and nods once at the sight of the scroll. Did you trip over the plum tree? He asked deadpan. No. Shame. I thought that'd get you. You sit down, scroll safe in your sleeve. You did it, your first mission. You are officially a shadow in service of history, and you only sneezed once. You wake up in a straw-filled loft with the smell of miso soup wafting up through the floorboards. Your legs are sore from last night's crouching expedition, and your ribs remind you that cartwheeling through a hedge is not as elegant as it looked in training. Jiro naturally is already gone, probably off practicing how to frown without moving his eyebrows. Today's schedule. Lessons in deception, poisons, and if you're lucky, a nap that won't end with someone throwing a radish at your head as a wake-up test. The path of the shinobi is unusual. As you descend the ladder, careful not to wake the spider who's claimed the top rung as its empire, you think about how odd your life is compared to the village kids who just play with wooden tops and try not to fall in the river. You're learning to climb walls, they're learning to climb fences. You're memorizing the pressure points that make people faint. They're memorizing the kanji for duck. Everyone has their path. At breakfast, your teacher hands you a bowl of rice and one small pickle. Congratulations, he says. You survived. Now we make it harder. You try not to sigh. Loud sighing attracts extra chores. Today's training involves a lesson on Henso Jutsu, the art of disguise. You're handed a bundle of rags and a smudged mirror. The goal? Become someone so convincingly boring that no one remembers you were ever there. It's actually harder than pretending to be a ghost or a demon. No one forgets a demon. Everyone forgets a tax clerk. You smear some ash on your cheeks, slump your shoulders, and attempt to look like someone who definitely doesn't carry concealed blades or secret scrolls. Your teacher inspects your work. You look like a bad actor in a good play. Thank you. Not a compliment. Still, it's an improvement from last week's failed impersonation of a shrine attendant, where your incense allergies betrayed you faster than any sword. Hensojutsu isn't just costumes. It's posture speech, even blink timing. You learn that samurai blink less often. Farmers blink constantly. Monks barely blink at all, which is disturbing when you think about it. The point is, the best disguise is not the one that looks right. It's the one no one bothers to look at twice. You're sent into the nearby village as your final test. Your mission: buy a bamboo brush from the scribe's stall without being remembered. Simple, except every wrinkle on your borrowed robe itches like 1,000 tiny complaints. You adopt a limp for no reason other than flavor, and try not to overact. As you pass the tofu seller, he nods once and says, "Morning, old man." You nearly bow in thanks, but remember, old men don't bow quickly. You shuffle onward, mission intact. By the time you reach the scribe's stall, your confidence is high. You ask for a brush in the most unremarkable voice you can muster: brown ink or black. The scribe asks, not looking up. Brown, you say. No one who wants to be remembered chooses brown. You hand over your coins and move to leave when a child tugs your sleeve. Your beard is falling off, she says. Ah, so much for perfection. Still, when you return to the compound, Jiro squints and says, "The scribe described you as someone gray and boring." That's almost praise. You bow, you'll take it. Back at the training hall, you're shown a lineup of items: chalk powder, crushed moth wings, dried fish bladder, and an empty gourd. You're told to combine them into a smoke bomb. Easy, right? Well, it would be if the fish bladder didn't smell like it was still alive. Eventually, with much coaxing and only 2 small explosions, you produce a passable smoke bomb. It puffs like an offended cat and smells creative, but it works. The day ends with a round of kusarigama practice, the chain and sickle weapon of nightmares and unnecessarily long range. You swing it like an amateur meteorite, almost decapitating a scarecrow. It's not a kite, your teacher says dryly. You think about retorting that it feels like a kite with a vendetta, but discretion is part of the ninja code too. Later, as the sun fades and the cicadas start their evening arguments, you sit on the veranda with a cup of barley tea. Jiro is whittling something vaguely threatening. You break the silence. Did real missions feel like training? He chuckles once, a dry sound like someone remembering a joke that ended with jail time. Training makes you think you know what's coming. Real missions teach you that you don't. That night, you dream of walking through walls turning invisible and convincing a warlord that you're just a humble lantern inspector. Dreams have no rules, which is good because in one of them your smoke bomb turns into a gossiping tanuki. As you drift toward morning, you remember a saying from your scrollwork lesson: the more obvious the lie, the more easily it's believed. Mainstream historians generally agree that the ninjas of feudal Japan were masters of misdirection as much as violence. While modern pop culture paints them as shadow-bound assassins with supernatural powers, the historical reality is quieter and stranger. Most of their effectiveness came not from throwing stars or death drops, but from being utterly gloriously forgettable. Of course, historians still argue whether the average ninja ever used the famous ninja stars, or if those were later inventions by dramatists and fans of pointy jewelry. But here's a quirky truth: some ninja carried small bells not to make noise, but to mimic temple priests during night infiltrations. Nothing quite diffuses suspicion like pretending to be a monk on his way to morning chants, especially when you also carry a flute and hum a tune that sounds vaguely spiritual. You wonder how many lives were saved by someone whistling at just the right moment. As you roll over on your futon and let your breath slow, you smile faintly. Today, you passed unnoticed. Tomorrow, you might pass as someone else entirely. You're woken by the sharp tang of rain in the air, even though your face remains dry. Somewhere outside, a bamboo gutter is dripping with all the indifference of nature. You pull your blanket tighter, but it's no use. Today is infiltration training, and that means getting wet, dirty, and possibly chased by goats. Again, your first task: climb the compound wall, crawl across the thatched roof, and steal the red ribbon from the dojo altar, all without making a single sound louder than a moth's sneeze. And yes, that's the official metric your instructor uses. You tie up your leggings, brush aside a spider that may or may not be your nemesis from last week's hayloft sparring, and begin your climb. The wall is slick, but you've been taught the trick spread your weight like you're gossip in a small village everywhere at once and somehow not traceable. The thatch of the roof is forgiving, but it crackles if your toes press wrong. One false move and you'll sound like a pig tripping over a zither. Your fingers curl around the edge of the roof. You pause. The sky is pale gray, the color of wet linen, and the silence around you is oddly soothing until you realize it's too quiet. That's usually when Jiro throws something. Sure enough, a small pouch of rice flour explodes against the wall near your foot. Missed. But not by much. You suppress a yelp and continue. Inside the dojo, the ribbon awaits like a sleepy dragon's treasure. You ease the door open using your sleeve as padding step across the threshold, like the floor is made of eggshells, and snatch the ribbon. It feels almost too easy. Of course the floor was rigged. Your heel presses a hidden tile. A bamboo tube dumps cold water on your back like a vengeful teapot. Well, says your instructor from behind a pillar, you're technically inside. I'll give you half points. You're soaked and annoyed, but also pleased. Half points are better than goat bites. Infiltration isn't about brute strength. It's about observation, like noticing that certain stones in a garden have been recently moved, or that a door opens outward instead of in. It's about hearing a dog breathe in its sleep 3 rooms away, or feeling the subtle warmth of a candle recently snuffed. You learn that no detail is too small. Even the angle of a teacup can betray a trap. One historical fact most people forget is that real ninjas were often scouts, saboteurs, and spies, not just assassins. Their greatest skill wasn't killing, it was vanishing. A perfect mission was one where no one knew they had ever arrived. Historians still argue whether some of the most famous ninja raids even happened because they left no trace. That, ironically, might be their greatest accomplishment. Your next drill involves slipping into a fake noble's residence, undetected. The house is set up with tripwires, ink traps, and at least one old man who was bribed with dumplings to sit by the door and yell randomly. You're handed a coil of twine, a pot of lampblack, and one slipper. Why just one? Because balance is part of the test, apparently. Jiro goes first and comes back covered in feathers and shame. You take a deep breath and start crawling. At one point, you have to freeze mid-movement as the old man stirs and coughs like he's auditioning for a drama about ghosts with bronchitis. You smear lampblack on your exposed skin to reduce reflection and hold your breath for what feels like an entire lifetime. At last he snores. You exhale, you pass the final threshold and ring the tiny bell on the throne room's doorframe. Victory. Your teacher claps once. Surprisingly competent. Did you leave anything behind? You check your pockets. Only my last shred of dignity. Good, that's not required. Back in the courtyard, you practice animal mimicry, a skill used for both distraction and camouflage. You bark like a dog, screech like a night heron, and after much persuasion, manage a decent impression of a startled monkey. Your reward. A dried persimmon and exactly one compliment. Less embarrassing than usual. Not many people know this, but some ninja were trained in bird calls so precise they could signal across valleys without raising suspicion. Others trained to mimic infants or old women depending on the job. One scroll even outlines how to fake a sneeze that sounded like a boiling tea kettle. You try not to think too hard about the situations that required that skill. The fringe detail that sticks with you is this: a few ninja are said to have used polished wooden sandals that left horse hoof prints behind them to confuse trackers. Was it effective? Debated. Was it dramatic? Absolutely. At sunset, you're given a task that sounds simple but isn't: sneak into the kitchen and steal a single scallion from under the cook's nose. The cook is a terrifying woman named Natsu who once caught Jiro and made him peel radishes for a week. You'd rather wrestle a bear? But the scallion must be stolen. You disguise yourself as a sack of rice. It's not your proudest moment, but the kitchen is dark, and your rice impression is frankly impressive. You inch your way across the floor while Natsu mutters about seasoning ratios. One toe wiggle too many and wham, her ladle lands beside your head. She lifts the edge of the rice sack and peers in. You smile weakly. She glares, then miraculously lets you take the scallion. Next time she grumbles, bring me sesame oil. You bow, of course. You spend the evening drying your soaked clothes over a fire, listening to the soft hiss of steam as your sleeve unwrinkles. The dojo glows gently, paper lanterns casting amber circles on the ground. You and Jiro sit side by side sharing a pickled plum and a silence that feels companionable. You think we'll ever be sent on a real mission, he asks. Maybe you say, maybe not. Maybe we already are. He grunts in agreement, or indigestion. It's hard to tell. Before bed, you review today's scroll. Invisibility is not a matter of light, but of mind. If you think no one sees you, you act like it. If you act like you belong, you do. You wonder how many nobles have spoken freely around a gardener who was really listening for secrets. Or how many guards dismissed the coughing monk who somehow knew the patrol schedule. As you curl up in your futon, you think about the strange combination of grace and awkwardness that defines your training. You've fallen into Barrel's mispronounced code words and once tried to throw a smoke bomb that never left your hand. But tonight you got the scallion. That has to count for something. It's early just before sunrise, and the sky hasn't decided whether it wants to be pink or gray yet. You're out in the forest again because nothing says good morning, like sneaking through thickets barefoot while trying not to alarm a family of squirrels. Your assignment today: surveillance. But not the boring kind where you sit in a tree for 6 hours, though that will come. This is the exciting kind where you get to trail someone without getting caught. The person in question, Master Sato. Master Sato isn't just your instructor, he's a legend. The kind of man who can eat a rice ball without leaving a single grain behind, or vanish into a crowd of monks with nothing but a slight cough and a respectful nod. And today you're supposed to follow him through the woods as he delivers something important to a nearby village. You're told nothing else. Typical. You set off after him, keeping low to the ground. The morning dew soaks your knees as you shuffle under bushes, careful to snap no twigs and rustle no leaves. Your breath is slow, quiet, barely audible above the hum of cicadas just waking up. You spot him ahead, just a flicker of movement and the faintest shimmer of his straw hat. This is the game now. Stay close, stay invisible. It sounds straightforward until Master Sato pulls what can only be described as a teleport. One moment he's walking ahead of you, the next gone. Poof. Like someone edited him out of the scene. You freeze, scan the trees, nothing. Then a soft tap on your shoulder. You scream in your soul because out loud screaming is not ninja protocol. Turn around and find him perched in a low branch behind you. Too loud, he whispers. Too slow. Also, you smell like scallion. He vanishes again. You spend the next 2 hours not trailing him, but rather being trailed by him. Tested in every imaginable way, footprints made too close to a stream bank. Breathing too heavily near a bird's nest, forgetting to disguise your scent with crushed pine needles. Every misstep is a new lesson. Every success goes completely unacknowledged, which in ninja training is high praise. Historians still argue whether real ninjas actually trained in such elaborate tailing techniques, or whether this was exaggerated by later legends. What's more likely, the ninja did develop a variety of stealth and evasion skills honed by centuries of mountain-dwelling guerrilla warfare, especially in places like Iga and Koga, where dense forests and hidden valleys offered perfect training grounds. One fringe tidbit. Some scrolls mention ninjas using soft animal paws cat or fox feet tied to the soles of their sandals to deaden their footsteps in gravel. It's deeply impractical and deeply hilarious. Imagine explaining to a samurai that your secret weapon is cat shoes. Another peculiar practice to test your ability to track by scent and sound, you might be blindfolded and sent to follow someone by sniffing a trail of garlic. Fail and you end up headbutting a tree. Succeed and you win, well, probably garlic. As the sun climbs higher, you return to the compound, a little scratched up but wiser. You're greeted by the sight of Jiro wrestling with a clothesline. He's trying to hang his training GI while simultaneously fighting off a rooster that has decided it is now the god of laundry. You help him without a word. That's what comrades do, plus you owe him for yesterday's persimmon. After lunch, you're assigned a quieter task, forging messages, specifically writing fake letters that look real enough to fool a noble's advisor, complete with slightly wobbly brushstrokes to mimic an aging official's handwriting and ink that smells faintly of rice wine. You practice on scrap paper mixing soot and tea leaves to create a believable ink tone. Then you carefully mimic the kanji of someone you've never met based on a single example. Your fingers cramp, your eyes cross, and eventually your fake letter earns a nod from your instructor. This may seem dull, but it's one of the most critical skills. Espionage isn't just about running on rooftops. It's about slipping disinformation into the right hands. Fun fact: some ninja used forged letters sealed with counterfeit family crests, tiny wax emblems pressed from carved bone molds they carried in secret compartments. Others even carried disguise papers which were elaborate written backstories including fabricated lineage town of origin and sometimes fake family drama. Yes, your imaginary uncle might be gravely ill in order to gain sympathy at a gate checkpoint. Jiro unfortunately draws the short straw and gets sent to clean the outhouse while reciting memorized war poems. He returns 30 minutes later smelling like shame and accomplishment. By late afternoon, you're back to surveillance training, but this time you're the one being observed. A senior student is trailing you and your task is to shake them. You try ducking behind stalls, diving under a bridge, and even pretending to be an enthusiastic street peddler selling imaginary pickled turnips. Bold choice, but it kind of works. You finally lose your pursuer by climbing onto a tiled roof and crouching among the decorative dragons. You stay still for 20 minutes while the wind whistles over the eaves, your muscles trembling, your mind going quiet. It's strange how stillness can feel like motion in reverse. That night, as the lanterns flicker low, you sit with the older students and listen to tales of past missions. Some are almost certainly made up, like the one where a ninja infiltrated a castle disguised as a flute-playing monk and hypnotized the guards into napping. Others are too specific to be lies. One story tells of a scroll wrapped in eelskin to keep it waterproof hidden in the bottom of a koi pond. You wonder how many carp read state secrets that year. You curl up again on your futon. Tomorrow will bring more drills, maybe climbing. Maybe cooking traps disguised as lunch. Last week the rice cakes were full of powdered pepper. But for now you let yourself rest. The air smells faintly of pine and ink, and your last thought before sleep is a quiet one. Maybe you're becoming more than just a student. Maybe you're becoming a shadow. Morning begins not with sunlight, but with the slap of a bamboo stick on a wooden drum. You jolt awake because that's the point and scramble to roll your futon neatly. One corner folds a little funny, but no one's watching, or so you hope. This is ninja school after all. Someone's always watching. Today's focus disguises. You head to the central hall where piles of garments await robes. Straw hats, farmers' tunics, even noblewomen's wigs made from coarse black horsehair. You're handed a plain kimono, 2 sizes too big a woven basket, and a clump of fake warts. Congratulations! You're now an old herbalist named Oki who walks with a limp and argues with his invisible cat. You practice hobbling around the yard muttering about phantom herbs and bad knees. The other students burst out laughing as Jiro leans in and whispers, Your cat just insulted my sandals. Disguise, you're told, isn't about the clothes. It's about the posture, the rhythm, the details that no one questions. How does a monk bow when he's tired? How many paces should a noblewoman take before she readjusts her sleeves? Why do fishermen squint differently than rice farmers? You rehearse each persona like a performer, minus the applause and with far more bruises. One mainstream fact: ninjas were masters of hensojutsu, the art of disguise. They dressed as monks, beggars, performers, merchants, or even other samurai roles that allowed them to slip past guards or gather intel in plain sight. Their goal wasn't invisibility. It was normality blending in so well they became wallpaper. Fringe fact number 1. Some ninja manuals advise smearing mud behind the ears and under the fingernails to simulate long-term field labor. Another scroll claims you should preemptively soak your clothes in soy sauce so they look and smell aged. The stinkier the farmer, the safer the secret, someone probably once said. And then there's the more theatrical side. Historians still argue whether ninjas ever impersonated kabuki actors to infiltrate pleasure quarters. The theory goes who notices an extra face when everyone's wearing white powder and yelling in poetry. It's plausible if not poetic. By midday, you're assigned a practical test. A senior instructor disguised as a merchant is stationed near the village. You and 3 other students must pass by him undetected. Your mission: retrieve a tiny scroll tied to the leg of a dog that lives near the temple well. The catch: the dog hates strangers and has a bark that can summon half the village. Your approach: you shuffle through the back alleys hunched over as old Oki, your invisible cat, loudly complaining about how the neighbors disrespect moss. You carry dried persimmons in your basket, not for you, but for the dog. Turns out he's a sucker for fruit. The instructor eyes you as you walk past. You don't flinch, you just mutter, "Moss is the future," and limp along. A minute later, the scroll's tucked under your sash, and you vanish into a side path. Mission complete. When you get back, the instructor gives you the tiniest of nods. You don't smile because that would give you away. But inside, you're basically cartwheeling. After lunch, which is a rice gruel, spiced with fermented plum and despair, you join the others in the storytelling hall. Today, the elder ninja recounts tales of famous infiltrations. One is about a man who impersonated a blind biwa player and sang songs so haunting that even enemy lords wept. While they sobbed, he mapped the estate with his feet. Another story claims a ninja once spent 3 days posing as a statue in a garden, complete with painted stone body and frozen posture. By night, he moved inches at a time until he reached the target. The line between myth and reality is as blurry as your vision after 2 hours of meditation in full costume. One of your favorites: a tale where a ninja faked a coughing illness to justify covering his face, wore stained robes, and carried around a fake infant made of rice sacks just so he could deliver a poisoned dumpling hidden in a prayer bowl. You can't help but wonder, what would your signature disguise be? Merchant monk. It's probably not old man with a talking cat, but who knows, it's growing on you. As the sun dips lower, you're sent to the makeup station. You're taught how to age your face using soot and crushed eggshells, how to darken teeth with ink for peasant roles, and how to mask facial features using cheek padding or nose molds. You end the session looking like an exhausted turnip vendor. Jiro says you've never looked better. One fringe tidbit from an obscure scroll some shinobi used plucked chicken feathers to simulate wispy mustaches. Others would bind their fingers backward in their sleeves to fake amputations. You try this trick and accidentally poke yourself in the ribcage with your own hidden dagger. Lesson learned. Finger illusions are for the experienced. As dusk settles, the group is called for night drills. You're paired with a partner and tasked with tailing an instructor through the twilight streets of the training village. The sky is a tapestry of indigo and ink. Lanterns flicker. The instructor walks like someone with nothing to hide, which of course is suspicious. You trail her silently ducking behind vendor stalls and crouching beside storage barrels. A dog starts barking. You toss a dried plum. It stops. Crisis averted. Eventually, the instructor disappears behind a silk-dyeing house. You approach slowly. When you reach the corner, she's gone, but there's a message carved into the wall with a hairpin. You were slower than the wind. You grin. That's basically encouragement. Back at the compound, the older students lounge around the fire pit. One's patching a tear in her disguise robe. Another is sharpening fake coins with hidden blades inside. You sit nearby, wrap yourself in a rough blanket, and listen to the low murmur of ninja dreams in the making. Jiro falls asleep mid-sentence, muttering something about exploding tea kettles. You'll ask about that tomorrow. Tonight, your muscles ache your disguise. Pouch smells like fermented bean paste, and there's soot in your eyebrows, but you're learning. You're transforming. You're becoming the shadow who walks like someone else. You wake to the scent of pine smoke and fermented radish. Not exactly the breakfast of champions, but at least it's familiar. Your bones feel a little heavier today, weighed down by yesterday's identities. Old Oki and his invisible cat may be gone for now, but the art of pretending of slipping into another's skin is still with you. Today, though, it's all about the real shadows. It begins with a silence. No morning drum. No loud instructor bellowing about scrolls or dishonor. Just a quiet hand gesture from the oldest shinobi, the one who rarely speaks. You follow him wordlessly through the misty woods behind the compound, past the moss-draped trees that whisper like old monks. It feels like you're sneaking into the world itself. You reach a clearing where black robes hang from a wooden frame, barely visible against the forest gloom. You're handed your first official shinobi shizoku, the ninja uniform you've imagined 100 times. It's not flashy. No glittering weapons. No oversized forehead band. Just a loose functional robe dyed in shades of gray, not black, because pitch black actually stands out under moonlight. Myth busted. A mainstream fact here. The iconic all-black ninja look is largely a creation of Edo period theater. Real ninjas wore colors suited to their environment. Earthy browns, navy blues, and even dirty whites for snowy missions. The goal was camouflage, not cosplay. You put on the robe, and it rustles like dried leaves. The older shinobi nods and beckons. Lesson 1. Learn to move like mist. What follows is a series of drills that feel more like dances than combat. You step heel first, toes lightly kissing the earth. You breathe shallow and through your nose. You're told to avoid casting a shadow when possible, not by defying physics, but by reading the light. Where does it fall? Where does it break? To your left, one student vanishes behind a tree with the grace of a deer ghost. To your right, another trips over a root and lands face first in a pile of damp moss. Nature 1, Ninja 0. Then comes obstacle training. You're blindfolded and led to a wooden course strung with bells, tripwires, and hanging bamboo sticks. Your job? Get through without a single chime. You move with exaggerated care, limbs trembling. Your sleeve grazes a bell. It jingles with the sound that feels louder than thunder. Somewhere, someone sighs. You make it through in 8 minutes and 32 bruises. The instructor claps once. That's as close to praise as you're going to get. Fringe tidbit number 1. Some scrolls suggest rubbing the soles of your feet with garlic and pine resin to improve traction and scent camouflage. Fringe tidbit number 2. There are tales of ninja sandals lined with horsehair that muffled steps and left hoof-shaped prints. Talk about misdirection. Imagine a samurai looking for you and finding a trail that screams tiny horse with espionage tendencies. After a water break, cold tea because luxury is for daimyos, you dive into nighttime training. Each student receives a small waxed paper lantern. Inside a beetle tied to a string, you blink. This is either very advanced espionage or a prank. Turns out beetles are part of your training. You're told to follow the insect's zigzagging path through the tall grass using only peripheral vision. Why? Because tracking without turning your head reduces your chances of being spotted. Plus, beetles don't get distracted. They just beetle. Historians still argue whether real ninjas used insects this way or if this particular practice is a later embellishment invented by scroll writers who maybe spent too much time alone. Either way, it works. You feel your awareness stretch not forward but sideways like your senses are growing whiskers. As twilight deepens, the training intensifies. You're paired off for stealth chases. One of you flees, one follows. No sound, no light, just breath and heartbeat. You're the pursuer first. Your partner, a girl named Kiko, vanishes so fast it's like she dissolved into the shadows. You drop low slip under hanging branches and follow the faintest trail, a snapped twig here, a scuffed pebble there. You catch up only because she paused to tie her sash. Later you switch roles. This time you run. You duck into a dry stream bed, cover yourself with fallen leaves, and slow your breathing until the world forgets you exist. You feel something pass nearby, Kiko maybe, or a fox. You don't move until the signal bell rings. Back at camp, the older ninja tells you this wasn't just a game. These chases are modeled after actual escape drills used during real infiltration missions. Some scrolls describe shinobi disappearing into drainage canals, hiding inside rice sacks, or even tucking themselves into coffin carts during temple processions. If it had a shadow, it was a hiding place. Dinner is a bowl of miso with floating radish moons. You eat quietly, watching the fire flicker. Someone jokes that the beetles are planning a revolt. You laugh quietly because laughter here is an art form. It's about sound discipline, not joy. As the fire dies, you're handed a small pouch of ash and told to scatter it behind you on missions. Why? To detect whether someone is following. A soft puff of dust is often the only sign of a careless step. Another fringe fact. Some shinobi carried tiny paper fans coated in powder that could be flicked into the air to distract pursuers or mark their trail for allies. Stylish and strategic. The ancient equivalent of a glitter bomb. You roll out your bedding in the corner of the hut, the night sounds humming softly outside. Somewhere nearby an owl hoots and someone responds with the perfect imitation. You smile in the dark. Today you learn to become the night, not just to walk unseen, but to exist so quietly the world forgets you're there. You're not just wearing the shadows now. You are the shadows. You wake not to the sun, but to a tap on your forehead from a twig, and the entirely too pleased face of Kiko above you. You breathe loud when you dream. She whispers, vanishing before you can retaliate. Another day in ninja camp begins with a reminder. Privacy is optional, stealth is mandatory. You sit up slowly, rolling your shoulders. Your joints whisper like old paper. Outside the hut, the trees drip morning mist, and the fire crackles low, attended by a junior trainee who looks like he's still half asleep. Poor soul. His shift must have started at moonrise. Today is all about tools. Not just weapons, but the quiet things, tools of deception, misdirection, and sometimes minor chaos. You begin with the basics. The kunai. Now you've seen this in cartoons overstated dramatic, always thrown like darts. In truth, kunai are more trowel than dagger used for climbing prying open gates or digging through plaster walls. Yes, you can throw them, but they're not aerodynamic masterpieces. They're basically ancient utility knives. One mainstream historical fact: kunai weren't primarily designed for combat. They were adapted from masonry tools used by farmers and craftsmen. Then come the shuriken or throwing stars. You hold one, feel the weight, a compact metal piece with four sharp edges and a hole in the center for balance. You throw it, it lands in a tree, barely. A pine cone falls on your head in disapproval. There's a whole ritual to it. Breathe out as you release, flick the wrist, and never throw more than one unless you're trying to show off or get disarmed. Shuriken aren't meant to kill. They distract, wound, or slow someone down long enough for you to vanish. That's the ninja way. Survive, not showboat. Fringe tidbit 1. Some shuriken were dipped in unpleasant substances like fox dung or powdered glass to cause infection or pain. Fringe tidbit 2. Others were etched with symbols meant to make foes believe the wounds were cursed. Psychological warfare right in your pocket. You also examine makibishi spiky caltrops scattered on the ground to puncture feet or horse hooves. A ninja's best friend during a retreat. You learn to make them by folding iron or even toughened bamboo. The trick: they always land with one spike up like a little demon in yoga pose. The real surprise of the day, though, is the hollowed-out egg. You're handed a delicate shell filled with ground pepper and ash. This is metsubushi, literally eye closers, a ninja smoke bomb. If someone catches you, you throw it at their face and run like you've just offended a very large bear. Historians still argue whether metsubushi were widely used in the field or mostly ceremonial, but documented instructions exist in scrolls from the Edo period. Some versions even included finely powdered glass or chili for added spice. Truly, the eyes have it. Next comes the grappling hook kajinawa, a coiled rope with metal claws that's heavier than it looks. You learn to swing and toss it with a graceful arc, aiming to snag a ledge or railing. Then you climb. Slowly, awkwardly, like a spider with stage fright. Halfway up, your foot slips and you dangle for a moment, contemplating your life choices. Below, your instructor raises an eyebrow and makes a note on a scroll. Probably needs work or screamed like a tanuki. During the midday break, you're given a scroll to study. It's a collection of Shinobi eerie techniques, methods of infiltration. You read about wall scaling, roof traversal, and how to cross gravel paths using wet cloths strapped to your feet. One drawing depicts a ninja curled up inside a giant storage jar waiting for a guard to pass. You wonder if you'd fit inside a pickle barrel. Probably not gracefully. The scroll also outlines the use of disguises: peddler monk, drunkard, or merchant. Not for fun, but for access. The best ninjas weren't mysterious shadows, but ordinary people you overlooked. Your teacher reminds you fear wears many faces, but the one you don't see is the one that stabs you in the dark. Later in the afternoon, the class assembles for practical tests. Each student is assigned a prop, a mirror, a flute, a box of loose rice. You must improvise a way to use your object in defense or escape. You get the flute. Not great. Kiko, of course, gets the rice. She throws it in the air and runs while the instructor slips, trying not to laugh. One boy blinds an attacker using the mirror to reflect sunlight. Another hides behind a horse cart with a chicken under each arm. It's unclear what the chickens were for. He wins anyway. You stare at your flute. Then inspiration strikes. You play a high, sharp note enough to startle the others. Then, as everyone glances over, you sprint. Distraction achieved. Victory questionable. But hey, now you're the ninja bard. Fringe tidbit alert: some legends claim ninjas used cricket cages to cover their own noise, letting the chirping mask footsteps. One tale even claims that some ninja trained to mimic bird calls so convincingly they could create fake warning signals in enemy territories. Whether that's true or just poetic nonsense is anyone's guess, but it sounds awesome either way. Historians still argue whether these quirky tools were ever used outside theatrical demonstrations, or if they were rare exceptions rather than the rule. But scrolls don't lie, even if the writers sometimes exaggerated for flair. Evening arrives, and with it a demonstration from your instructor. He walks up to a wall, taps once, and disappears. Just gone. You and your classmates rush forward and find the trick. There's a camouflaged gap, hidden by an overhang. Inside, it's just wide enough to hide a body. The lesson: escape is always an option. Hiding is winning. Running is noble. Back at the fire, you polish your kunai while someone roasts sweet potatoes on a spit. A boy tells a story about a ninja who used trained mice to deliver messages. Someone else swears their cousin saw a scroll about explosive clay chickens. You all laugh quietly. The line between history and bedtime story is pretty thin tonight. As stars appear, you feel the shift. You're not just learning to fight or hide, you're learning to disappear to be a rumor, a possibility, a breath of wind behind a closed door. You slip into sleep, imagining yourself as a shadow, crossing rooftops, your flute tucked into your sash, and a small confused chicken under one arm. Ninja life indeed. You wake with a jolt, not because of a twig to the forehead this time, but the thunderous crack of a bamboo training sword landing dangerously close to your ear. Kiko smirks. "Sleep like a warrior, not like a cat in the sun," she says before darting off. You sigh. One of these days you'll get her back. Maybe with a cricket cage. Today is strategy day. Not in the glamorous general on a horse sense, but the real stuff. Infiltration, exfiltration, manipulation. Less shouting and more sneaking. You sit in a quiet grove ringed by stone lanterns and moss, where your instructor begins his lesson, not with the speech, but by lighting incense. Apparently, even lessons in espionage benefit from a calming mood. Your scroll for the morning contains something called the Ninpo Gokui, the core secrets of the Shinobi arts. According to legend, these teachings were passed down by shadowy masters, refined over generations, and recorded in cryptic symbols. One mainstream historical fact: while the ninja arts are shrouded in myth, there were actual manuals like the Bansen Shukai written in the 17th century, detailing everything from spy tactics to herbal recipes. Your instructor breaks it down into 3 pillars: intelligence, disguise, and misdirection. Easy to remember, harder to master. First, intelligence. Not just knowing things, but knowing what others think you know. You learn how to plant rumors, how to listen without looking like you're listening. One exercise involves pretending to be drunk at a village well while eavesdropping on a conversation about grain taxes. It goes surprisingly well. You slur your words, hiccup in rhythm, and hear everything. Later, you're given actual seikei. You fall asleep on a goat. Less successful. Fringe tidbit 1. Some ninja used fortune-telling as a cover for intelligence gathering, spouting vague predictions while observing body language and coaxing gossip. Fringe tidbit 2. Others posed as wandering monks, offering blessings in exchange for secrets wrapped in chants and incense. Just imagine a covert agent with a shaved head and prayer beads whispering code between mantras. Next disguise. You've worn mud, you've worn ash, you've worn regrettably a full sheepskin to mimic a pile of livestock. But today you try something subtler. You're dressed as a potter. You carry a cart with broken bowls and speak in a slow Kansai dialect. You walk into the neighboring hamlet. No one blinks. You ask a child where the shrine is. She points and tugs her mother's sleeve. The potman's funny, she whispers. Success. The lesson. Be dull. The moment you look interesting, you're remembered. And ninjas are most powerful when they're forgotten. Historians still argue whether these disguises were daily practice or rare high-risk maneuvers. Some scrolls detail disguises so elaborate they border on theater. But even basic transformations changing posture speech gait were part of the Shinobi toolkit. Then misdirection. You learn the beauty of diversion. One student tosses a rope into a stream to mimic footsteps. Another sets a candle behind a screen to simulate movement. You're handed a frog in a lacquered box. You look at your teacher confused. Set it free, he says. Then vanish. You nod. The frog leaps into a crowd. People shriek. You duck under a curtain through an alley and emerge pretending to sell turnips. It works. You now understand misdirection isn't just about escaping danger. It's about creating questions with no answers. A footprint that leads nowhere. A voice where there's no body. A frog in the town square. You become not a person, but a riddle. Later, your group is split in two for an exercise. One half guards a chest in the forest. The other half must steal it. You're with the infiltrators. You hatch a plan. Kiko distracts them by posing as a panicked washerwoman, shouting about bandits. You crawl under leaves coated in mud, breathing shallow. It's slow. Unpleasant. You encounter a caterpillar you suspect has a vendetta, but eventually you're under the platform. You unscrew the latch. You slide the chest away inch by inch. You vanish into the trees. Kiko joins you 5 minutes later, still pretending to sob. My laundry, she wails, then grins. Victory smells like crushed pine needles and smug satisfaction. You regroup by the river where a quiet debrief takes place. You didn't run, you vanished. That's what we need, says your instructor. One scroll you're shown later contains a fascinating sidebar. Some ninja used inflated animal bladders as flotation devices. A cross between a water wing and a bladder raft. Picture it a man in black, bobbing silently down a stream disguised as flotsam. The stuff of bedtime stories and tactical genius. Fringe tidbit. There's a legend that ninja carried coins with holes in them, not just for currency, but for hiding tiny scrolls or poison needles. Others claim those same coins were weighted precisely to create specific footstep rhythms, masking their own with decoy beats. It might be nonsense, or it might be the sneakiest pocket change in history. At night, you sit around the fire again. Someone makes shadow puppets against a tent wall. One looks suspiciously like the daimyo. You laugh. The line between history and myth thins further when an older student shares a tale of a ninja who disguised himself as a ghost, dressing in white, moving silently through misty graveyards to spook superstitious guards. He never killed anyone, the boy says, just terrified them until they quit. You stare into the fire and think about it. Maybe being a ninja isn't just about fighting. Maybe it's about imagination, how you twist perception until truth feels like fog, and fear is something you wear like a cloak. The embers crackle. Someone starts humming a lullaby in a language you don't quite know. The moon is high and the mist is rising again. You stretch your sore muscles and imagine being not just unseen, but unknown. Tomorrow you learn poisons, or maybe how to walk on water. At this point, nothing would surprise you. You wake before dawn not to birdsong, but to the faint rustle of a bamboo curtain, and the earthy smell of boiled herbs. A shadow passes your doorway, one of the senior students' arms, full of vials. Today is not a day for swords, it's a day for secrets and bottles. Welcome to the Ninja's Apothecary. You're led to a thatched hut on the edge of the compound. It doesn't look like much, just a slanted roof, bundles of dried weeds, and a pot of something bubbling ominously over coals. But once inside, you realize this is where the real weapons are made. One mainstream fact: ninjas were masters of pharmacology. They learned medicinal treatments for wounds, but also concocted poisons, soporifics, and even smoke bombs. It's not just ninja lore, it's in old scrolls like the Ninpadan and Banzen Shukai, which include detailed lists of herbs, minerals, and fungi. You thought you were training to fight with kunai. Turns out dried mushrooms and beetle shells are just as deadly. You start the lesson by sniffing a crushed leaf. Your instructor warns if your tongue tingles, don't eat it. Excellent advice, frankly. You grind seeds into powder, mix resin with oil, and learn how to store venom in tiny hollow reeds, just in case you ever need to silence a target or knock out a guard dog. The second one feels more your speed. Fringe tidbit: some ninja allegedly laced rice balls with laxatives to soften enemy patrols before an attack. Others carried sleep smoke, a blend of spices and irritants that didn't actually put people to sleep, but made them cough and stumble long enough to vanish into the mist. Is it deadly? Not quite. Is it hilarious? Extremely. Then comes the poisons. You hold a vial of nightshade extract. The color is too pretty to be trusted, deep violet like bruised silk. Your instructor demonstrates how to dip a needle into it without contaminating the shaft. Always poison the tip, he says. A clean strike. No smell, no stain. Historians still argue whether ninja regularly used lethal poisons in missions. Some records suggest they avoided killing unless necessary. After all, an informant can't speak if they're dead. But other sources hint at more ruthless methods, especially during feudal blood feuds. You're given a test to identify which of 3 powders will paralyze, which will itch, and which is harmless. You squint, you sneeze, you pick wrong. Congratulations, your hand goes numb for an hour. It's part of the learning. Later, you move outdoors to test delivery methods. One student uses a reed to blow powder into a candle flame, creating a puff of smoke that smells faintly like burnt cinnamon. Another mixes a cream that causes mild irritation on contact. Kiko naturally smears a dab on a coin and flips it into another student's lap. He scratches his neck for hours. Some of this is theater. Much of it is real. You begin to appreciate how subtle warfare can be. One scroll describes a poison called Tears of the Moon, allegedly brewed from crushed moth wings and tree sap. It induces dizziness, hallucinations, and a sudden belief that frogs are reciting poetry. Is it real? Who knows, but someone clearly took the time to name it. As evening falls, you're taught antidotes. Every poison has a balance, the instructor says. For belladonna, charcoal. For nightshade, warm salt water. For the coin, prank soap. There's something comforting about knowing how to undo what you've learned to do. And then, because nothing about ninja life is normal, you finish the day with a memory game. You're handed a tray of 24 objects: dried snakeskin, a pinch of sulfur, a crushed beetle shell, a black feather, and so on. You study them for 60 seconds. Then the tray is taken away and you must list them from memory. Why? Because sometimes your only clues are what you saw in a rival's pouch, or what was left behind in a powder trail, or what smell clung faintly to their clothes. Fringe tidbit: some ninja train their noses with rotted meat incense and burned rice paper to identify poisons by scent alone. Others claimed they could smell a lie. This is probably metaphorical. Probably. You walk back to your sleeping mat with a new respect for the invisible weapons of war. A kunai is one thing, but powder in a teacup, a vial on a ring. These are tools for people who don't need to be strong, just smart, silent, and a little unhinged. Someone offers you tea. You pause. They laugh. It's just mint. You sip anyway, but your hand hovers near your belt, where you now carry a tiny reed tube filled with powdered chili and rice husk. Not lethal, but enough to confuse, disorient, and escape. The fire flickers. The moon hangs like a quiet blade in the sky. And in the shadows of your thoughts, you realize being a ninja isn't about fighting in darkness. It's about turning anything into a weapon, even tea, even laughter, even you. You wake to rain whispering on the roof. It's the kind of steady drizzle that makes most people stay in bed. But not you, because today you learn to vanish, or at least to try. There's no dramatic cloak, no smoke puff. Just a muddy courtyard, your instructor, and the lesson carved into your legs after hours of squatting in tall grass, trying not to sneeze while a cat sniffs your toe. Let's begin with the mainstream fact. Ninjas practice the art of tanpo, or escape and concealment, as one of their core disciplines. This wasn't just about hiding, it was about not existing in the first place. Whether in forests, towns, or enemy castles, the goal was simple: don't be noticed. If noticed, don't be followed. If followed, disappear. You crouch beside a patch of reeds. Your instructor points at a line of thin footprints vanishing toward the trees. Then he points at yours, thick sunken, and shaped like someone's been practicing dramatic ninja poses in the mud for 20 minutes. Try again! You're taught how to step lightly. Use the ball of your foot, not the heel. Adjust to the surface on gravel, go toe first. On dry leaves, heel first. This seems contradictory, but it's ninja logic. Learn every wrong way so you know the right one for this exact moment. Then comes the fringe disguises. You expected black robes. What you get is a bundle of clothes that include a straw farmer's hat, a merchant's vest, and a monk's sash that smells suspiciously like old pickles. No one suspects a yam seller, your instructor says. Especially one who walks with a limp and whistles badly. So now you're limping and whistling and pretending to be deeply invested in tuber pricing. It's absurd. It's brilliant. Historians still argue whether ninjas really use disguises this often. Some believe it's exaggerated in modern retellings. Others point to records of spies infiltrating villages, shrines, and even rival ninja schools while posing as everything from basket weavers to blind minstrels. The truth is probably somewhere between all the time and when it was funny. Next up, blending into natural surroundings. You're handed a square of dull brown cloth and told to sit still in front of a wall of rocks for 20 minutes. While a senior trainee tries to spot you from 50 paces, you hold your breath, you go still. The senior trainee spots you instantly and throws a small walnut at your forehead. You start over. This is where it gets weird. Fringe tidbit: some ninja used live animals to help distract or mask their presence. A cricket tied to a string, a pigeon trained to flap at just the right moment. Even the strategic toss of a startled frog. It's not exactly elegant, but elegance isn't the point. You learn how to use the environment, duck under bamboo, press yourself against a wall's shadow. At twilight, lay flat in irrigation ditches. One student overdoes it and gets mistaken for an actual scarecrow for nearly an hour. He's both proud and a little chilly. Then come the traps. You set decoy slippers pointed toward a false path, a rice ball crushed beneath a stone to look like someone stopped to eat. You leave misleading scents: chili oil on one trail, sandalwood ash on another. It's a dance of misdirection. You're handed a handful of pebbles and told, make yourself known, then disappear. You rattle them behind a tree, draw a guard's eye, and slip sideways into a patch of shadow and moss. It doesn't work perfectly. You trip over a root, but you recover fast and duck into a narrow goat path. Breath shallow, heart thudding. The guard shrugs and keeps walking. Victory. Then there's the nighttime drill. You're led to the woods and told to return to camp without being seen. Easy, right? Except the forest is full of watchers. Other students with torches, bells, and a hunger for finding you. It's like tag, except if you lose, you sleep outside in a burlap sack that smells like fermented radish. You crouch behind a stump. You wait for the bell to pass. You ease down a slope on your stomach like a very committed earthworm. Someone sneezes nearby, not you. You slip past them, hugging the edge of a stone wall, skirt a stream, and reach the campfire just as someone trips over a branch behind you and screams like a betrayed ghost. You are handed a steamed bun and congratulations, and then immediately told to go back and try it again. By the end of the week, you've mastered the art of the unnoticed. Not invisible, just unremarkable. Which to a ninja is far more useful. No one remembers the second man in the line. The one who sneezed quietly, limped awkwardly, and maybe carried yams. You return to your sleeping mat not triumphant, but uncertain whether anyone noticed your return. And that you're told is the highest compliment. The moon rises quietly over the tiled rooftops as you stir from light sleep, summoned not by a voice but by a soft tap on the wood beam above you. It's time to move again, but this time there's no running or hiding. Tonight you learn silence. Not quiet, not tiptoeing. Real deliberate bone-deep silence. Mainstream fact to begin, the ninja practiced Shinobi Aruki, or the silent walk, as one of their most crucial stealth techniques. It wasn't just about stepping lightly, it was a choreographed method of moving 1 foot at a time with toes splayed slightly. The foot placed with care and weight distribute like a whisper. You tried on wooden boards. One step creaks. Another moans like a ghost with unfinished paperwork. But your instructor's steps make no sound at all, even when he walks directly past you in the dark. It's magic. Or more likely, decades of sore calves. And then yes, the weird part. Fringe tidbit number 1. Certain ninja schools train their students to memorize which floorboards creaked in key buildings by mapping them with pebbles during cleaning jobs or watching how servants moved. Imagine infiltrating a castle by knowing which step squeaks and which one stays silent. Your legs may ache, but your memory's sharper than ever. You're handed a tray with tiny ceramic bells tied to it and told to walk across a wooden hallway without ringing a single one. It's like trying to carry soup while being attacked by mosquitoes' nerves and noise everywhere. You fail the first 5 times, then something clicks. Your breathing slows. Your gaze softens, not darting but flowing. You adjust your balance from heel to hip like water moving across stone. And finally, you reach the other side without a sound. Your instructor nods once, the kind of approval that could move a mountain, or at least a particularly stubborn sheep. Historians still argue whether ninja training placed this much emphasis on footwork and stealth over weapon skills. Some accounts suggest they were better known for intelligence gathering than close combat, while others highlight their legendary reputation as assassins who melted into shadows. Maybe both, maybe neither. Depends on whose scroll you're reading and how poetic their scribe was. Next lesson, Kujian or the hand signs? Now, before you get excited, no, you're not summoning fireballs or vanishing into clouds like some anime character. This isn't a cartoon, it's meditation discipline and muscle memory rolled into 9 symbolic gestures said to focus the mind and spirit. You sit cross-legged in candlelight, hands moving slowly. Rin, Pyo, To, Sha, Kai, Jin, Retsu, Zai, Zen. Each one said to bring strength, harmony, or shielding. Real maybe. But you'll take any edge before creeping past a guard dog with excellent hearing and questionable hygiene. The fringe gets fringier. Some ninja believe that focused chanting and hand signs could dull pain, sharpen intuition, or confuse enemies. There's even a tale of a ninja freezing mid-step while being chased muttering hand signs to blend in with a shrine statue until the pursuers gave up and left offerings. No confirmation that this actually happened, but if it did, that's commitment and a very awkward cramp. Now you're handed a bundle. Inside a mix of tools you've never seen before. A ring with a tiny spike, a folded length of chain, a powdery pouch that smells like mustard and shame. This is your first kit. Mainstream historians call this Shinobi dog a collection of devices and weapons designed for infiltration, misdirection, and escape. Not glamorous, not flashy, just useful. You practice climbing walls using a pair of clawed hand hooks. Your arms protest, your knees complain, and your pride takes a hit when you slip on your third try and land in a shrub that seems to mock you with its rustling leaves. You try a smoke pellet next. It puffs into your own face and leaves you sneezing. But that's part of the game. Failure is rehearsal. Precision comes with repetition. And eventually that hook finds purchase. That powder puffs where it's meant to. That silence becomes your second skin. Your instructor shares a trick: carry dried peas wrapped in cloth. Toss them against a far wall to draw attention. Better still, drop a pebble in someone's shoe before they walk a long corridor. Harmless, maddening, and totally plausible for sabotage. Another fringe tidbit. Some ninja carried wooden sandals carved to look like animal paws on the bottom. So if they left tracks, they'd be blamed on a passing fox or tanuki. Because obviously a raccoon broke into the Lord's vault and stole state secrets. To be fair, you've blamed worse things on animals. Like the time your rice balls vanished mysteriously and the temple cat looked just a little too smug. As the night deepens, you're told to move from one corner of the compound to another, collect an object, and return all without triggering any of the silent tripwires your classmates have set. You feel like a contestant on the world's oldest and quietest reality game show. One wrong step and you'll end up dangling from a tree limb in a net made of laundry rope. But you move. Carefully. Deliberately. A breath at a time. You use every trick you've practiced: silent steps, misdirection, shadow, hugging, decoy, pebbles, and somehow when you reach the candlelit finish line, the instructor looks up and says, "Didn't hear you," which here might as well be a standing ovation. You collapse onto your mat just as the sun kisses the horizon. You're sore, you're hungry, and you are, at least for this hour, a whisper in the dark. Dawn barely brushes the mountaintops when you wake to the sound of running water. No, not a tranquil brook babbling through a forest glade. This is the icy, skin-numbing kind of water pouring from a bamboo pipe into a stone basin, where your instructor insists you splash your face twice before beginning the morning drills. It's supposed to shock you into alertness. It mostly just shocks you into cursing your life decisions. Today's training: disguise and infiltration. No swords, no climbing, just the art of not being noticed. Mainstream historical fact: the ninja were masters of blending in. Unlike samurai who broadcasted their presence with armor and family crests, ninja used costumes, body language, and even speech patterns to fade into a crowd or impersonate someone of importance or someone very much unimportant. Your instructor hands you 3 outfits: a traveling merchant's worn robes, a low-ranking monk's humble garb, and unexpectedly a peasant woman's work dress. You raise an eyebrow. He raises one back and says simply, "Every face has a use." Fringe tidbit 1. Some ninja were trained to speak in different dialects, mimic regional accents, and even fake physical disabilities to avoid suspicion. There's a record of one operative who pretended to be blind tapping his way through a town, listening for whispered gossip while everyone else ignored him entirely? You try walking as a beggar, slouching low, coughing convincingly. The instructor isn't impressed until you shuffle across a courtyard, and a fellow student almost hands you a rice cake out of pity. Score. Fringe tidbit 2. In some texts, ninja are described using dried pumpkin shells as fake swollen bellies to appear malnourished or ill. Nobody stops a sick man, especially one leaking suspicious green goo. You spend the rest of the day practicing entry strategies. One involves pretending to be drunk and leaning heavily on guards until they wave you through just to get rid of you. Another includes carrying a tray of food with a bored expression and muttering about more tea for the old goat upstairs. Historians still argue whether ninja actually use these forms of trickery often, or if later storytellers exaggerated their theatrical skills. Some suggest the idea of a disguise artist ninja was mostly legend, shaped by kabuki theater and Edo period novels. But in a world where power meant visibility, invisibility may have required a little flair. Next, the art of listening, real listening. You're given a wooden cup and led to the side of a palace wall. The instructor places the rim against the wood and presses your ear to the other side. At first you hear nothing, then a scrape, a shuffle, a quiet sentence about a delivery arriving at the back gate tomorrow morning. You sit there still as stone, holding your breath like it's made of gold. Listening, you realize, is a full-body exercise. Your heartbeat becomes your metronome, your breath. The background track your mind, a filter sorting sound from silence. Later that evening, you're brought to a small chamber filled with paper scrolls and ink. You're handed a writing brush, not for calligraphy, but for creating a fake letter. A forgery. You blink. This is not what you expected from ninja school. Mainstream fact, many ninja were trained in the arts of espionage beyond physical action. Writing fake correspondence, altering maps, or planting forged orders were all valid tools in the Shinobi toolkit. Fringe tidbit, some agents practiced writing in the hand of specific generals or scribes, down to the flourishes on certain kanji. One legend tells of a forged love letter that caused 2 rival daimyo to go to war over a woman who inconveniently never existed. You practice making your brushstrokes look rushed emotional, then neat and formal, then slightly drunk. Your instructor nods approvingly when you manage to copy his signature so well, he almost forgets writing the original. Then you're shown how to plant a forgery tucked inside a boot, folded into laundry hidden behind a false drawer panel. This apparently is more important than knowing how to throw a dart, because sometimes words cause more damage than steel. As dusk falls, the night's final lesson approaches the infiltration test. Your mission: sneak into a mock estate guarded by fellow students pretending to be alert samurai, avoid detection, leave a message under the Lord's pillow, and exit unseen. You're given 3 props: a disguise, a pebble pouch, and a thin black cloth to wrap around your head, not for dramatic effect, but to keep your hair out of your face. You slip into the estate wearing the monk's robe, muttering about prayer offerings, slipping past one distracted guard. You drop a pebble where another is about to step, causing just enough distraction to move past. You hug shadows, count your steps, breathe through your nose. You reach the Lord's chamber, place the message, a folded leaf with ink scribbled in moonlight, and retreat before your nerves betray you. Later you hear the Lord discovered the note, opened it, and read the single word written seen. A shiver of satisfaction rolls down your spine. Historians still debate whether ninja operated this independently, or if most were low-level scouts used by more powerful warlords. The truth is probably both. There were organized groups with protocols and discipline, and there were lone agents moving like smoke, answering to no one but coin and cause. The night ends with a quiet meal. Rice, pickled plum, and tea brewed over a tiny flame. You eat slowly, savoring the silence and the rare stillness. Then your instructor tosses something into your lap, a plain black sash. You've passed the test of silence and shadow. Tomorrow it'll be something new fire, maybe. Or poisons. Or underwater breathing using a hollow reed like a suspiciously quiet otter. Who knows? But for tonight, you've earned a little pride. And maybe if the floorboards permit a full hour of sleep without someone dropping rice balls on your face for training purposes. You rise before the sun muscles protesting, mind still dancing with last night's infiltration success. But there's no time to bask in glory. Your instructor greets you with 2 words, Fire Day. You're not sure whether to groan or grin. Fire has always been a tool of power used to warm, to cook, to cleanse, and in the case of Shinobi, to deceive and destroy. Today you'll learn the art of controlled chaos. Mainstream historical fact ninja were known to use fire as a tactic for distraction and sabotage. If you set fire to a supply depot, even a small blaze, the enemy must respond, leaving gaps in their security or delaying their plans. Your first task: build a fire that won't be noticed until it's too late. You're handed a satchel of oil-soaked rags, a bit of pine resin, and a small clay pot filled with something that smells suspiciously like fermented squid. Timing is everything, says the instructor. Light it too early and you're caught. Too late and you waste your window. You construct a tiny pile in the corner of an abandoned shed on the training grounds, discreet, tucked under a low eave shielded from wind. You add a fused twisted rice straw rolled with powdered bamboo charcoal. Light the end and it burns slowly, almost theatrically. You time it to delay for 15 minutes. Fringe Tidbit won some ninja-created smoke scrolls, small paper tubes filled with sulfur saltpeter and ground charcoal wrapped tightly and sealed with wax. Lit, they produced enough smoke to confuse guards or cover a retreat. Basically, ninja-grade stink bombs. Yours smolders perfectly. The moment the smoke curls out of the eave, you're already circling around to plant a decoy footprint by the kitchen. Fringe Tidbit too. According to a few obscure scrolls, some shinobi went so far as to train birds, yes, literal birds, to carry tiny flaming bundles and drop them on thatched roofs. Historians still argue whether this was a real tactic or an early form of fantasy fanfiction. Next lesson: signaling with fire. This isn't about burning things down. It's about communication, visual Morse code, ancient and flammable. You're handed 3 colored smoke sticks, white, green, and black. 1 puff means retreat. 2 means rendezvous. 3 means mission complete. The trick is you must find a way to light them from high ground, hidden from enemy eyes, but visible to your allies. You scramble up a rocky ledge behind the camp, digging your heels into sandy soil lungs, working overtime. The wind shifts just as you strike your flint, sending your first smoke signal directly into your own face. You cough, elegantly, like a trained ninja would. Eventually the signal rises, a slender column of white curling through the trees like a curious ghost. Later you're taught about fire decoys, how to make a small campfire burn hot and bright while you slip away. You use reflective pots to mimic conversation flickers, toss in a few pieces of damp cloth to create silhouettes, and leave an empty teapot hissing gently. If a patrol passes, they'll think your group is still cooking dinner. Meanwhile, you're already miles away, hiding in the reeds. Mainstream fact: some of the most successful ninja operations involved not fighting, but simply confusing the enemy. Fire was a tool of noise, not violence, meant to stretch resources, provoke mistakes, or buy time. Your instructor shows you how to carry fire safely. A small clay egg filled with ember-packed moss and a bit of sulfur, a portable flame tucked into a gourd on your belt. It smells like a particularly antisocial campfire, but it works. When lit, it's like carrying a match that never dies. You practice lighting fuses from it while sprinting once with your dominant hand, once with your non-dominant and once blindfolded, because of course you do. Fringe tidbit some scrolls mention Shinobi using candied gunpowder pellets. Yes, candy wrapped in rice paper chewed just enough to soften the paper, then stuck to wood or cloth and lit as a delayed ignition device. Weaponized gumdrops, essentially. The final exam of the day: enter the mock castle. Ignite a decoy signal, exit unseen. You've done this before, but now you must use fire as your weapon, your ally, and your distraction. You slip into the shadows as a storm brews overhead. The rain makes everything slippery, and your foot nearly finds a loose stone. You pause, listen. Then you crawl, low place your smoke scroll beneath the eaves and light the fuse. 30 seconds later, a dark plume slithers skyward and voices shout in confusion. You're already gone. Historians still debate the extent to which ninja used real explosives. Some suggest they rarely did, citing a lack of archaeological evidence. Others point to recovered scrolls with detailed chemical recipes and note that the Japanese were experimenting with sulfur and saltpeter long before the samurai wrote poetry about cherry blossoms and falling courage. You return soaked, coughing, and triumphant. Your instructor gives a half-smile, the shinobi equivalent of thunderous applause, and hands you a folded note: tomorrow you'll learn poisons. Because what's a little espionage without a side of toxic mischief? You fall asleep wondering what powdered toad venom tastes like. Spoiler, you probably won't like the answer. You wake up to the smell of something foul. Not just musty or earthy, but truly aggressively offensive, like rotting garlic rolled in old socks and fermented eel. Welcome to Poison Training Day. Let's be clear, you're not learning how to kill, at least not directly. You're learning how to neutralize, to distract, to incapacitate. Sometimes all it takes is a good case of food poisoning to reroute a general's agenda. Mainstream historical fact: ninjas were known for using naturally occurring toxins, including nightshade aconite, also called wolf's bane, and snake venom. These weren't Hollywood-style instant kill serums. Many were slow, unreliable, and just as likely to cause confusion or illness. You sit cross-legged in front of an array of tiny clay jars, each sealed with wax and labeled in kanji, so old it looks like the language is trying to warn you. There's dried belladonna, powdered wasabi, root snake bile in rice vinegar, and something that your instructor only refers to as cricket surprise. You're handed a long spoon and told only stir, never taste. Wise advice. Your first task: mix a compound to coat a dart tip that will paralyze a chicken. Not kill it, just convince it to lie down and rethink its life. The dart is thin, made of bamboo, and the coating thick and yellow-green, smells like someone boiled cabbage inside a sweaty sandal. You coat it, aim, and release. The dart lands near the chicken, who eyes it suspiciously before pecking at it. A minute later, the chicken is still standing. Another minute later, it's lying on its side, blinking slowly, clearly reconsidering all its decisions. Success. Fringe tidbit: some ninja schools train students to coat their own fingernails with trace poisons enough to cause a rash or mild fever in someone they clawed during a struggle. Ninja manicures, but lethal. Next comes disguise through poison. You're handed a tiny sponge soaked in fermented plum wine and crushed yew leaves. Not to use on someone, but to breathe in. Why? Because it makes your breath smell like someone who's been ill for days. You use it before entering a guarded temple, posing as a sick beggar to pass unnoticed. It works. The guard doesn't even look at you. He just steps aside with a grimace and pulls his sleeve over his nose. Fringe tidbit. It's rumored that some female shinobi known as kunoichi used scented oils laced with irritants, applying them like perfume. A guard gets one whiff, leans in, and moments later is sneezing so hard he forgets to raise the alarm. Historians still argue whether this was more performance art than practical espionage. Back at camp, you're taught to make kusuri dango medicine balls. They look like sweets, but inside are carefully measured herbs, meant to cause drowsiness, confusion, or a sudden urge to, well, find a private spot. Let's just say if you slip one into a guard's rice bowl, he won't be watching the back gate for long. Your instructor grins and says, sometimes nature is crueler than steel. You spend the afternoon identifying herbs by touch and smell blindfolded. You get most of them right, except for one you mistake for licorice root that turns out to be crushed centipede. Your mouth tingles for hours. The evening test infiltrate a fake merchant cart, lace a water jug with your concoction, and leave no trace. You crouch behind a bush grinding dried mushrooms into fine powder. You add 2 drops of vinegar to activate the compound, then slip it into the jug's corked mouth using a slender reed. No splash, no scent. Then you vanish. Minutes later, a test guard drinks it. Nothing. But 15 minutes in, he begins to hiccup uncontrollably and stumbles behind the cart, muttering about spinning trees. Success. Mainstream fact. Many shinobi operations succeeded not by eliminating enemies, but by making them sick, confused, or just delayed. One poisoned meal could unravel a chain of command long enough to shift a battle. Your final lesson of the day is the antidote game. You're given a cup of tea, one of 4 cups, only one of which is tainted with a mild muscle relaxant. Your job is to identify the safe one. You sniff, you swirl, you listen to the way it moves in the cup. You watch the instructor's poker face. Then you pick one, raise it, and sip. Everything is fine. You sigh relieved, then sneeze twice and notice your legs are a little tingly. He raises an eyebrow. You chose the least poisoned one. That's still a win. Historians still argue whether the ninjas' poison lore was as advanced as the scrolls suggest. Some claim it was exaggerated, mythologized by later storytellers to enhance the mystique. Others believe certain shinobi had access to a pharmacopoeia lost to time plants no longer growing mushrooms misidentified, or knowledge buried with the last masters. You return to your mat fingers still smelling faintly of root bark and vinegar. You lie down and feel your heart rate slow, whether from fatigue or leftover yew fumes, you're not sure. Outside, a moon the size of your palm peers through a break in the clouds. You wonder how many targets were ever felled by chicken darts and coughing guards, and you hope tomorrow's training is a little less gastrointestinal. As you drift off, you mutter a quiet note to yourself, never trust licorice again. You wake just before dawn to the rhythmic slosh of water and something faintly metallic clinking in the distance. Your legs ache from yesterday's chicken dart adventure, but there's no time to indulge in soreness. Today is trap day. Your instructor announces it like it's a game show. Grinning, wide-eyed arms spread toward a wooden path, rigged with more hidden snares than a booby-trapped garden party. You and the others are told to make it to the other side of the field without being seen, snagged, tripped, or embarrassed. Spoiler, you'll probably be all 4 by lunch. Mainstream historical fact ninjas used a variety of portable improvised traps and alarms in their missions. Everything from noise-making caltrops to foot snares strung between trees with black cord invisible in the dark. Your first test, the infamous makibishi. These are tiny spiked objects scattered across walkways and courtyards. No matter how they land, at least one spike points upward. You'd swear they were designed by someone who hated feet and joy. You're handed straw sandals reinforced with slivers of bamboo and told to tiptoe like a cat burglar on a balance beam. The key, they say, is not just avoiding the spikes, but also staying quiet enough to hear if someone else steps on one. The yelp of a victim is sometimes more useful than the trap itself. You move cautiously. Your toes grip the edges of the straw. One wrong step and you'll find out exactly how many nerve endings live in your heel. By some miracle, you make it through, though a branch slaps your face near the end. Ninja glamour indeed. Quirky tidbits: some ninjas reportedly used crickets in bamboo tubes as primitive motion alarms. If someone approached a guarded area, the insect's chirping would suddenly stop, alerting the listener. It's the only time in history a cricket's silence has made someone panic. Now it's your turn to make a trap. You're handed rope, a small bell, a wooden wedge, and a thin metal wire. Your assignment: rig a perimeter that alerts you to intruders but doesn't alert the intruders that they are being heard. You tie the wire between two bamboo poles about ankle height, attach the bell to a flexed branch with the wedge set as a trigger, and step back. You test it by nudging the wire with your foot. Ting. Barely audible, but enough. The instructor nods. Not bad. Add 2 more bells and someone might not die. Encouraging. You then practice Sunadarai, the sand drop trap. You hang a tiny clay bowl filled with sand above a doorway suspended by a single taut thread. When the door moves or someone brushes the threshold, the thread snaps the bowl tips, and sand trickles down not onto the target but into a waiting footprint tray. A subtle marker someone has entered. Fringe tidbits: some ninja scrolls mention using glow-in-the-dark substances made from crushed fireflies or fermented fish bones mixed into oils. The idea was that you could paint a line on a surface that was invisible in the day but glowed faintly at night. Historians still argue whether these compounds actually worked or were more of a poetic exaggeration. Back to traps. Your next lesson: psychological warfare. You craft a decoy trap. Something that looks like a trap but isn't. You tie a red ribbon to a bent twig and place it halfway along a trail. Your job is to make it just obvious enough to spook someone into stepping off the trail where the real trap lies. You chuckle a little at how satisfying this deception is. Then step into your own tripwire. Your leg yanks upward, you dangle like a confused fish, and you hear the instructor's slow clap from the trees. You are becoming one with the tradition. Later that evening, you're shown how to rig a grappling hook from a garden hoe, some scrap rope, and whatever divine intervention might keep it from snapping mid-climb. You attempt to scale a tree wall. The first 2 throws fail. The third sticks. You ascend halfway before the hook slips, and you slide down like a grumbling lizard. Quirky tidbit: there are records of ninja using sticky rice paste to temporarily hold climbing pegs and cracks of stone walls. The paste hardens, quickly grips well, and smells faintly of disappointment when it fails. As night falls, you're given one final challenge: set up a silent perimeter alarm using only 2 spoons a length of string and a single leaf. You tie the spoons to branches on either side of the trail, stretch the string taut between them, and balance the leaf across it like a fragile seesaw. If the string moves even a little, the leaf drops silent yes, but you've placed it on a square of fine powder. The falling leaf creates a perfect mark, letting you know when someone passed and how fast. It's brilliant, and it works. The instructor grins and hands you a small polished stone. Good trap minds get the moonstone. Apparently it's a thing. You accept it like a child given a golden sticker and return to your mat with a tired sense of pride. Historians still argue whether ninja traps were as widespread and complex as pop culture implies. Some believe only a few elite shinobi were trained in trap making at all, while others argue that the techniques were passed down in oral tradition and thus lost to the sands of documentation. You lie back thinking about Bell's chicken spoons and the alarming number of ways a tree can punch you in the face. The crickets chirp softly, at least the ones not stuffed in bamboo tubes. It's your 4th night without a pillow, and your neck has begun drafting letters of protest. The moonlight spills across the sleeping grounds like spilled milk over cracked stone, cool, pale, indifferent. You wrap yourself tighter in your scratchy blanket and listen. The others snore. Even the instructor has retired to wherever intimidating mentors go to dream of outwitting apprentices. But not you. Tonight is your first solo mission. You're not assassinating a daimyo or scaling castle walls. You're sneaking into the instructor's garden and retrieving a painted stone from beneath a notoriously territorial rooster. Your task is to infiltrate, remain unseen, acquire the target, and exit. So basically a feathery Black Ops nightmare. Mainstream historical fact ninja training often included stealth exercises centered around infiltration, not just enemy forts, but everyday spaces, blending in with commoners, sneaking past guards, stealing scrolls or tokens from under surveillance. It was all part of the Shinobi repertoire. You begin by coating your feet in a fine mixture of ash and rice flour. Why? Because it mutes the sound of footsteps, helps you detect subtle surface texture shifts underfoot, and according to your fellow trainee, makes your soul smell like ghost pancakes. You edge forward on your toes, step by step. The night air tastes of damp wood and whatever chickens dream of. You slip past the first obstacle, a tripwire barely visible beneath a string of drying onions. Past the laundry line rigged to collapse and clatter if touched. Past the stacked bamboo fence with a pressure plate that releases a noisy wind chime if nudged. You are the wind. You are the night. You are... Squawk! The rooster's beady eyes glow with fury. You freeze. The painted stone rests beneath a makeshift shrine of upside-down rice bowls. You inch forward as the rooster struts in place, flapping once like a feathered executioner. You extend your hand. A second squawk. Then from somewhere behind you, hear a gentle thunk. Another trainee, not so stealthy, just triggered the onion line. The rooster bolts toward them. You snatch the stone pivot on the balls of your feet and slink into the shadows like a victorious weasel with emotional baggage. Quirky tidbit: in some rural training dojo, students would practice nighttime infiltration by retrieving a paper talisman from inside a ring of sleeping cats without waking a single one. These cats were fed fish and pampered, but apparently also trained to react violently if disturbed. One scroll refers to this as the test of the 9 lives. Back at your mat, you inspect the painted stone. It's shaped like a turtle and smells faintly of soy. On the underside is carved a single word, breath. You nod. This is either profound or an inside joke. Either way, you passed. The next day, you're taught the art of disguise. You're handed a peasant's tunic smudged charcoal for fake grime and a bundle of straw to strap to your back. Your mission: blend in with the group of real farmers arriving to trade at the nearby village. If you're spotted by the gatekeeper as not a farmer, you fail. You shuffle along the road muttering about grain prices and pretending to chew on a rice stalk. You even invent a limp and an imaginary goat named Taro to sell the part. You pass. The gatekeeper waves you through with the enthusiasm of someone who's seen too many goats. Fringe tidbits: some ninjas carried hollowed-out eggs filled with pepper ash, or even powdered glass to use as improvised escape tools. Thrown into the eyes of a pursuer, the contents would buy precious seconds to vanish. You're then told to disappear. Yes, just like that. The instructor claps once. You have 10 seconds. You run. Behind the stable, no, too obvious. Under the market cart, too loud. You spot a stack of rolled tatami mats leaning against the wall. You press your back to them, crouch low, and hold your breath. A moment later, the instructor walks by, stops, sniffs, then continues past. You exhale into the mat weave. You are officially a hiding ninja. Historians still argue whether ninja disguises truly involved elaborate costumes like Buddhist monks or traveling performers, or whether they simply relied on subtle cues and behavior. Some scholars claim the elaborate disguises were romanticized later, while others cite scrolls detailing outfit swaps and makeup use. After your victory, you're given a celebratory task: eat lunch with chopsticks, while wearing cloth over your eyes. The goal isn't just to build dexterity, it's to heighten awareness. You realize just how much sound matters. The slosh of soup, the faint bounce of tofu, the weight of the rice bowl against your wrist. You also stab yourself in the chin. Repeatedly. The others don't laugh, at least not loudly. Your instructor claps. You are becoming aware. You are also becoming hungry. Later, you learn to move through foliage silently. The trick: flatten your foot from the outside edge inward, then roll softly forward. This is known as Shinobi Aruki, the ninja walk. It looks like a mix of Tai Chi and sneaky ballet. Your first try makes a squirrel fall out of a tree in protest. Eventually you get it. You can sneak past dry leaves without a single crunch. You glide through bamboo thickets like a suspicious breeze. The final test of the day: shadow following. You're paired with a senior student. Your job is to tail them without being seen, heard, or smelled. They disappear into the forest. You trail them low, careful, hugging shadows like old friends. You spot them near the stream. You step closer. They vanish again. You spend the next 20 minutes searching. Nothing. Then you feel a gentle tap on your shoulder. They'd been trailing you. You nod. Respect. Later that night, you carve your name into the underside of your mat, just a small mark. A silent promise: one day you will pass every test, even the cat one. The moon has barely dipped below the treetops when you're shaken awake not by a person, but by a whisper of wind that somehow feels like it carries a command. You blink groggily. Then, before you can protest, your instructor's silhouette appears in the doorway. No words, just a nod. You're being summoned for your first real field simulation. Mainstream historical fact: while pop culture loves to drop ninjas into dramatic assassinations, much of their actual work involved espionage, sabotage, and information gathering. In fact, the majority of ninja missions likely involved sneaking into enemy territory, not sticking blades in people. Tonight's task: infiltrate the outskirts of a neighboring fief map, the patrol patterns of its border guards, and return unseen. No taking anything, no direct confrontation. Just disappear and observe and melt back into the darkness like a particularly nosy fog bank. You travel light black tunic, silent sandals, collapsible ink brush, and your ninja lunch: a rice ball filled with dried plum and wrapped in seaweed, wrapped again in silence and hope. You move like you've practiced soft steps, low stance, breath tucked in your chest. The forest becomes your ally. Twigs don't snap beneath you, they sigh. Leaves lean away instead of crunching. Even frogs seem to blink slower around you, like they sense you're one of the night things now. Halfway there, you encounter a surprise. A merchant's cart turned over, wheels cracked, bags of beans spilled like an edible avalanche. A man crouches beside it, cursing softly. A torch flickers near him. Do you help? Ninja code suggests avoiding engagement at all costs. But your training has also emphasized adaptability and testing whether a situation is as it appears. You creep closer. Fringe tidbit ninja sometimes tested whether someone was who they claimed by observing their footwear. Real peasants wore straw sandals tied in a certain style. Samurai pretending to be farmers often got it wrong. Shoes told stories. You spot it. His sandals are wrong, too refined, too polished. And there under his sleeve, the glint of armor. It's a decoy. You back away before he can spot you. A trap for curious intruders. Clever. You note the location, the distance from the fief's border, and how well it's staged. This is worth reporting. You continue. Soon you reach the border path. Two guards pace like pendulums on opposite sides of a stone lantern. One hums tunelessly. The other keeps glancing toward a darkened copse as if spooked by something unseen. You slither close enough to count their steps. 12 paces, turn, pause, speak, repeat. You scribble quickly on your rice paper with the ink brush guard pattern time, of pause, direction of gaze. No names, just movement. You're told never to identify individuals in writing. Patterns are what matter. Quirky Tidbit 1 ninja training method involved writing reports in mirror script completely backwards so only someone trained could decipher them quickly. Another version used folds and slits in the paper that revealed the message only when aligned precisely. You tuck the paper into your tunic and begin the return trek. Everything feels quieter on the way back, as if the forest recognizes what you've done and is silently proud. Or maybe just sleepy. Historians still argue whether actual ninja missions were assigned by high-ranking lords or orchestrated informally through shadow networks of local families. Some believe the covert operations were so decentralized that multiple clans operated independently unknown even to each other. As dawn stretches pale fingers across the sky, you reach the edge of your training grounds. Your instructor is waiting. You offer no words, just the scroll. They don't even unroll it, just nod once. That's all you need. You collapse onto your mat and sleep like a rock disguised as a loaf of bread. When you wake, the air tastes of smoke and something unfamiliar spice. You follow your nose to the courtyard where a group of new students is practicing a very different kind of skill disguise, via smell. You're handed a pouch filled with pungent herbs, ginger garlic, and dried deer musk. Your assignment: blend in at the traveling apothecary stand in the village. Act sick. Ask for a salve. Smell the part. You rub the pouch on your sleeves and try not to gag. The effect is memorable. You smell like a sickly stew left under the sun. You hobble into town. The apothecary doesn't even blink. Offers you foxgland tonic, whatever that is. You buy it. It jiggles in the bottle like it holds secrets. Mission success. Fringe tidbit: to avoid recognition, some ninja wore reversible jackets, black on one side, brown or gray on the other. During escapes, they could flip their coat toss on a straw hat and become a farmer in seconds. Later, during evening drills, you train in underwater breathing. Yes, really. You're handed a hollow reed and led to the pond behind the storehouse. Hide, they say. Wait. You submerge yourself, reed poking above the surface like a timid cattail. Minutes pass. The surface ripples. A duck paddles by, glancing at your makeshift snorkel with suspicion. You remain still. Eventually, a bell rings the all clear. You emerge damp, freezing, and victorious. Another lesson complete. Historians still argue whether ninja actually use these reeds or whether the concept is entirely mythologized. No solid archaeological evidence exists, but stories persist in dozens of scrolls, suggesting at least the idea circulated widely. The day ends with meditation. Not the peaceful kind, though. You're told to balance a pebble on each knee, one on your head, and a cup of water in each hand. Then, to clear your mind, the others fidget, lose balance, get drenched. You imagine you're floating, weightless, breath slow. You don't move for 15 minutes. When you finally open your eyes, your instructor is already gone. But your pebbles still rest perfectly in place. The night falls with that kind of hush that feels deliberate, like even the crickets are in on something. You've slept, eaten a bowl of barley, stretched your sore shoulders beneath a cypress tree, and now you're back at it. Tonight's assignment: escape capture, or more accurately, survive being hunted. A senior trainee nicknamed Ghost, for reasons that become obvious, is tasked with tracking you through the woods for the next 2 hours. Your job: don't get caught, and don't leave a trail. Mainstream historical fact ninja were trained in advanced evasion tactics, including doubling back on their own footprints, creating decoy trails, and hiding in places their pursuers would never expect, like underwater beneath a layer of floating leaves or in tree hollows masked with mud and moss. You slip into the shadows, blending with the trees. No shoes tonight, barefoot for silence. Every step is a decision, every breath measured. At first, it's tempting to sprint to put distance between yourself and Ghost. But sprinting leaves trails, broken twigs, kicked pebbles, stirred birds. You slow down. Instead, you climb. Fringe tidbit: some ninjas were trained to scale walls using hooked claws worn over their hands and feet. Others used bamboo poles fitted with claws, Primitive grappling hooks that could be quietly withdrawn once over the barrier. You clamber into a tree and crouch between thick limbs. You smear mud over your cheeks and press leaves to your back. You wait. 20 minutes pass. A shadow flickers below. Ghost. You can tell by the faint glint of the blade tucked into his sash and the way he moves careful but not slow. He doesn't look up. You hold your breath for so long that your ribs begin to ache. Then, like mist, he glides past. You drop silently onto the other side and head deeper into the woods. Halfway through your escape, it begins to rain. Just a drizzle at first. Then a sheet. You grin. Mud is a great ally. You scoop a handful, press it onto a flat rock, and drag your sandal across it, an obvious footprint. Then a second. Then none. You tiptoe through the grass, circle a tree, and hide beneath an old, overturned basket used by field workers. Fringe tidbit ninja often used ordinary agricultural objects, baskets, hoes, even manure carts as hiding places or camouflage. Some even wrapped themselves in straw mats and pretended to be haystacks. The rain falls harder. You close your eyes and listen. Ghost never finds you. By the time the bell sounds signaling the end of the trial, you're soaked stiff and grinning like a smug raccoon. Ghost finds you eventually back at camp munching on a roasted sweet potato like it's the world's reward. Nice mud print, he mutters. You bow, he bows back. Training escalates over the next few days. Now you're handling tools. Not swords, though. Tonight you're handed a hollowed egg. You're puzzled until it's cracked open inside finely ground pepper, ash, and sand. You ever need to vanish, your teacher says. Blind them first. Mainstream historical fact. Ninja frequently carried metsubushi blinding powders stored in eggshells, bamboo tubes, or small bags. Thrown into an opponent's eyes, these created a critical few seconds for escape. You spend an hour practicing the motion. Thumb, snap, toss, vanish. The powder's brutal. You tear up even practicing at half strength. Quirky tidbit, some versions included ground chili or crushed glass for extra potency. The formulas were closely guarded clan secrets. Your next challenge is architectural. You're taken to a replica tea house. Your job: infiltrate it, collect the scroll on the top shelf, and exit without leaving any trace. The test begins before you even realize it. One of the wooden floorboards squeaks. You hear it. Your teacher hears it. You wince. Start over. This time you step on the support beams beneath the tatami. No creaks. You slide open the door using the silk cord trick you learned. Loop it through, twist it open from the outside. Inside you move like smoke. No brushing sleeves, no scuffing mass. Scroll in hand. On the way out, you spot something, a tiny jar tucked under the altar. Curiosity tugs at you. You lift it. Inside is a preserved cricket. Dead but arranged with reverence. A tiny black ribbon is tied around its thorax. Historians still argue whether ninja practice spiritual rituals before missions, or whether stories of tiny totems and tokens are purely symbolic. But in some clans, small objects, teeth, feathers, dried. Insects were carried as good luck charms or omens. You replace it carefully. Then you step out, scroll tucked inside your tunic and bow. Not bad, says your teacher, but the jar was a test too. You blink. You passed. You respected the spirit. That matters. Later that evening, you're introduced to signal fires. Yes, really. Each flame means something different: danger near, safe to proceed, retreat, or regroup. Your assignment: climb the east ridge and light the right combination based on your surroundings. You climb fast, the air thins, your torch splutters. But the fire flares up in the proper pattern: 2 short bursts, then a long one. Fringe tidbit: in some ninja tech's instructions exist for using trained birds like crows or pigeons to deliver short messages using tiny scrolls tied to their legs. Birds weren't always reliable, but sometimes they beat a man on foot by hours. You descend the ridge with legs like jelly, and then for good measure you're tasked with planting a false trail shoes, leading to a cliff brush disturbed, and a bit of red cloth snagged on a branch, all to make the enemy think you've fallen to your doom. The best part, the cloth is soaked in goat blood. You didn't ask where they got it, but it works. Even your own comrades believe you've perished for a minute. The celebration upon your return is as hushed as the forest. A nod here, a quiet grin there. You're told you'll soon move from simulated trials to real-world missions. Observation, eavesdropping, shadowing a diplomat who's rumored to be leaking secrets. Historians still argue whether ninja were used more by local lords or national shogunates. The evidence points both ways. But everyone agrees by the time you're assigned a real mission, you're no longer a student. You're a whisper with a pulse. You're sent out under a moonless sky, your first real mission. No more staged scroll heists or mud footprints meant for teacher approval. Tonight, you're shadowing a diplomat who has the annoying habit of carrying secrets in his sleeves and sipping sake like no one could ever want to eavesdrop on him. You're to track him from the tea house in the village square to the gatehouse near the eastern rice paddies, and you are not to be seen. Mainstream historical fact intelligence gathering was a core function of the ninja. Often working as infiltrators, spies, or scouts, they were invaluable in political espionage, especially during the tumultuous Sengoku period. Your mission kit includes a flask of water, 2 small pebbles to toss as distraction tools, a dark cloak lined with waxed paper to resist light rain, and of course a bit of dried rice paste wrapped in cloth because nothing ruins a stealth mission like a growling stomach. You lie on the roof above the tea house where the air smells like cedar smoke and oversteeped herbs. The diplomat steps out fanning himself and stumbles slightly, already half drunk. He's easy to follow except he pauses constantly, wants to tie his sandal, wants to admire the moon that ironically has not shown up, and once because he thinks he hears something, which awkwardly he does you knocking over a potted plant while avoiding a cat. The cat hisses, you hiss back. Classic ninja diplomacy. But the diplomat carries on mumbling about ghosts. Fringe tidbit, some ninja missions were aided by rumors deliberately planted ghost stories that made people paranoid. Belief in supernatural happenings could cover up the strange sounds or glimpsed shadows that would otherwise seem suspicious. You tail him all the way to the gatehouse, then retreat into the bamboo forest without a sound. You're back at camp by dawn, breathless limbs aching but victorious. The next week is all about poisons. Yup, you've moved up to the fun part. Mainstream historical fact, ninjas were trained to identify concoct and sometimes administer poisons from local herbs and minerals. These ranged from skin irritants and tranquilizers to fatal toxins derived from aconite nightshade or crushed stones. You're not learning how to assassinate not directly. It's more about gathering knowledge. How a few drops of crushed cherry blossom resin can cause numbness. How raw blowfish can paralyze you. And weirdly, how nutmeg in large enough quantities makes people hallucinate wildly. Your hands now smell like a strange mix of moss vinegar and things you definitely don't want to cook with. Fringe tidbit, some ninja manuals even listed poisons meant for use on animals such as guard dogs, so they could pass through estates undetected. Others included stomach-turning mixtures smeared on walls to keep enemies from entering certain rooms. You're taught never to use these things casually. They're to be memorized and stored last resorts for desperate moments, not your go-to tricks like hiding behind a kimono rack. One evening, you're tasked with delivering a sealed scroll to a contact posing as a farmer. Except the scroll is a decoy, and the contact is actually a rival trainee. Your job: survive the ambush and get away with the real message tucked beneath your sash. So naturally, halfway through the handoff, 3 figures leap from the trees. This isn't a lesson in winning, it's a lesson in exiting. You kick one in the shin, throw down your pouch as bait and sprint. You run straight into the river because, yes, you practiced that. Fringe tidbit, some ninja wore small bamboo tubes between their teeth to breathe while submerged in water. Though cinematic portrayals exaggerate this, the idea of limited underwater breathing using hollow reeds or reeds capped with silk was real and clever. You float beneath a thick tangle of reeds barely daring to blink. The world above is muffled chaos, feet splashing, voices shouting. Eventually they give up. You emerge from the muck half crab, half human, and make it back with the real scroll. Soaked, shivering, triumphant. But don't expect applause. You get a nod or rice ball and orders to be ready for field duty in a week. Your first long-range mission involves travel to a neighboring province, where a warlord's household is under suspicion of plotting a coup. You're posing as a wandering musician. So, you have to learn the shamisen in 3 days. Historians still argue whether ninja were trained in arts like dance, poetry, or music as infiltration tools. Some scrolls mention such skills, others focus purely on military and stealth techniques. But the truth probably lies in both the more believable the disguise, the safer the agent. You pluck the strings with uneven rhythm, wincing as your fingernails take a beating. But you learn enough to pass. Enough to sit quietly at a hearth, sip broth with your hosts, and smile politely when asked to play. And while they're half listening to your uneven tune you're watching, who comes and goes? Which guards fall asleep early? Which servant always seems to linger near the private quarters? Quirky tidbit: in some cases, ninja were inserted into enemy homes, not for days but for months, disguised as gardeners, stable boys, or even monks. They collected gossip like harvesters collecting grain. You pass your notes to a messenger wrapped inside a dried fig of all things and begin your slow retreat home. You think you've made it, until you spot the rider. He's coming fast, not toward you, but along your return path. That fig might have been intercepted. You detour into the hills, camping beneath twisted trees, chewing dry rice until your jaw aches. You sneak past checkpoints by pretending to be a traveling healer, offering ash paste for burns and wrapped pine needles as a cure for stomach cramps. People are so distracted by your horrible medical advice that they don't ask questions. Eventually you make it home, and you're never the same. The camp sees it too. They don't test you anymore. They assign you. Your name is added to the night log. You become someone others look at sideways, half in awe, half in fear. And yet you're still the one who leaves socks drying too close to the fire and accidentally sits on your own poisoned dart pouch. You're still human. But now you're human who survives. You've crossed rivers by moonlight, climbed walls, slick with moss, and once, just once, hid inside a thatched roof until your legs went numb. But tonight you're not sneaking or spying. You're delivering misinformation. Yes, your mission is to lie convincingly and in writing. You're crafting a forged scroll that will be discovered by an enemy courier who doesn't realize he's being played like a shamisen with two broken strings. Mainstream historical fact deception was a pillar of ninja tactics. Not just physical stealth, but strategic psychological warfare, planting rumors, false intel, and decoys to confuse or delay enemy movements. So you're in a candle-lit hut, writing in deliberately shaky calligraphy, mimicking the style of a paranoid general who always dots his I's yes, the Japanese version, and adds unnecessary flourishes to his kanji. You even sprinkle the scroll with ash and blood to make it look like it survived a desperate scuffle. It's a performance in parchment. Fringe tidbits: some ninja scrolls describe fabricating entire conversations between supposed spies, then leaving them in places where accidental discovery was almost guaranteed, much like dropping your diary near your nosy older sibling. Your fake scroll will claim that reinforcements are arriving at the wrong riverbank. Hopefully, when the enemy rushes there, they'll find nothing but frogs and disappointment. As you prepare to leave your instructor hands you a bundle wrapped in black silk. Inside a smoke pellet, a folding dart fan, and a small sealed tube labeled only with a red X. You raise an eyebrow. He grins. Don't open it unless your life depends on it. Charming. You set out hugging the tree line, slipping between watchfires and rice granaries. The scroll is hidden inside a hollowed reed. If someone catches you and breaks it, they'll find nothing but splinters and bamboo dust. The real scroll that's in your belt sash, folded so small it looks like a sweat rag. You reach the drop zone by dawn. Place the scroll. Step on a branch just loud enough to alert a sleepy guard, and vanish into the grass before they blink. Let them find it. Let them wonder. Let them waste half a battalion chasing mist. Historians still argue whether missions like this were truly successful, or whether the impact of ninja tactics has been over-romanticized by later literature. But even skeptics agree where confusion reigned, ninja likely walked. You trek home slowly, stopping at a wayside temple. A monk greets you with rice gruel and silent respect. You sit beneath a statue of Jizo, the protector of travelers, and exhale. You're not injured, not exposed, not even noticed. Which in your line of work is the highest praise imaginable? You arrive at the compound to find a new scroll posted on the main gate. It's an announcement your service is being transferred to a daimyo in the north. Harsher winters, tougher assignments, higher risk. You don't protest. You gather your few belongings. Oilcloth throwing darts, a letter from home with a pressed leaf still inside. Then you bow to your instructor. He returns it but says nothing. He doesn't have to. That night you sleep lighter. Not just because the straw mat is thin or the crickets are loud, but because your life is now lived in half shadows. And yet, there's peace in that. You think of all the things you've learned. That silence is louder than shouting. That stillness can be mightier than action. That sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who looks like they'd lose a game of tag. Fringe tidbits: some ninja were trained to feign weakness or foolishness to disarm suspicion. Playing the fool to mask brilliance was part of their psychological toolkit. You don't know if you'll survive the next year or the next season, but you know how to melt into a festival crowd, how to forge a letter convincing enough to start or stop a war, how to vanish across rooftops like a bad dream nobody quite remembers in the morning. And that in this era of swords and whispers is power. As the temple bell rings across the hills, you pack your cloak, adjust your sandals, and vanish, just like they trained you. Not as a ghost, but as a shadow, a whisper, a name that's never spoken, and still somehow always feared. You wake before the first rooster calls. The air is hushed in that eerie way only dawn can manage, somewhere between the last breath of night and the first sigh of day. Your transfer to the northern province is now official. You leave behind your old compound, your training pit, the creaky floorboard in the meditation hall that always betrayed your step. Now it's rice paddies and colder wind, new dialects, unfamiliar shrines, and more chances to disappear. As you walk, your shadow stretches long on the road. You pass farmers beginning their chores who nod without looking too hard. That's the point. You could be a wandering monk, a low-level clerk, a merchant's errand runner. You're trained to blend in so thoroughly that even your footsteps sound like someone else's. Your new lord's estate rises from the mists like something summoned. Fortified walls, harsh discipline, and an unmistakable tension in the air. The castle feels like it's waiting for something bad. Mainstream historical fact: by the Sengoku period, many lords employed ninja as full-time retainers, not just spies for hire. You are now one of them, technically part of the household, though you'll never be invited to tea. You're briefed on your first task: infiltrate a rival clan's outpost disguised as a servant. Standard fare. But as you prepare, you're handed something new: a mask. Not the theatrical kind. A simple black cloth cut for the eyes, a signal. This isn't about stealth anymore. This is intimidation. Fringe tidbit: some missions were designed purely to induce fear. A shadow glimpse through trees. A message left written in reversed kanji. A sword placed just a few inches from someone's sleeping head. You arrive at the outpost at nightfall, scrubbing floors with vinegar water, listening. The guards are drunk on rice wine. The chief strategist is snoring in a side room, and someone's left a half-drawn map on the desk. Easy pickings. But you pause, because this is the first time the enemy looks like people. Not demons. Not villains. Just tired men trying to outlive another month of chaos. You copy the map by memory, replace it exactly, and leave behind a figurine. Small, wooden, worn. A monk's carving. Something that shouldn't be there. Something they'll find in the morning and wonder about. Let them feel watched. Historians still argue whether ninja missions truly turned the tides of wars or whether their success was exaggerated by fearful rumors and storytelling. But to the soldiers who woke to a silent fortress, empty scroll case, and a lantern, burned halfway through the wick proof wasn't necessary. Fear did the job. You return before dawn. A hawk call signals your approach, one of your own disguised as a bird keeper. She nods once. You pass. She fades into the bamboo. At the fortress you report, quietly. No debrief, just a nod from the retainer who never once says your name. You head to your assigned quarters. A single matte rice bowl chipped water basin. You sit down, let the silence spread. And for the first time in days, you let yourself breathe. Not deeply, not carelessly, but just enough. You are one of many. 100 shadows stretched across the island, slipping through castles and myths alike. Fringe tidbits some ninja clans passed down their methods orally, for centuries never writing anything down. Their greatest secrets were never archived. They were memorized, lived, and then buried. You will leave no legacy, no children, no statue in the temple courtyard. But the ripples you send through time, those unseen echoes, might just shift the world. You light a single candle, watch the wax melt, and in its flame you think of all the things you've learned. That truth can be a weapon. That silence can be louder than arrows. And that sometimes the most powerful warrior is the one nobody even noticed was in the room. You stretch out on your mat, the chill of the northern stone pressing up from beneath you. Outside, a breeze rattles the rice paper walls, not enough to disturb your sleep, just enough to remind you the world is still turning. Slowly, gently. Let it turn without you for now. Your breathing slows. The weight in your chest lightens with each exhale and the night deepens, softening around the edges like ink diluted in water. The footsteps that once kept you alert now sound far away like leaves shifting in a dream. The mask you wear in daylight, sharp-eyed, silent, watchful, melts away in the dark. For now, you're just a body at rest, a soul folding inward gently like cloth tucked away after use. The missions are done. The blades are clean. The whispers can wait. You lie still safe in the hush between stories. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of cherry blossoms of laughter you haven't heard in years, of walking openly beneath the stars without counting the exits. And as the last candle burns out and the shadow of your past curls at the edges of sleep, a voice almost too soft to catch reminds you, I'll be here with another story for you tomorrow night.